Besides the fact that there's tons and tons of people who are getting to the conclusion that besides some people considering 50 being the new 40, 40 being the new 30, and so on and so forth, statistics prove otherwise. That is, it has been from the beginning of this year, just some recent studies show that over 70% of individuals over the age of 30, both male and female, especially in UK and United States, are either pre-diabetic or diabetic. Now, before we get into the whole process and what we can do about it, I want to make clear one simple concept, that is, type 2 diabetes is basically insulin resistance to a different degree. But insulin resistance, you have to know that it's a spectrum. You have, you might be, if your A1C level is over 5.6, you've already started being insulin resistant to a tiny little degree, okay? And you get to pre-diabetic, and then before that you could be slightly insulin resistant, and then I think it's, if you are somewhere around, yeah, exactly, it's somewhere under 80, you are completely insulin sensitive. That is, your body doesn't have any difficulty trying to process even a little bit further the carbohydrates. And so therefore, I'm not going to go into the idea that everyone knows that insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes is the real pandemic, and people are, once you get that, it's a silent killer, and so on and so forth. One thing I do want to make clear is that it is generally the complications of diabetes, that is the inability of the person to get proper guidelines and to follow through and to control their blood sugar, which gradually leads to complications, which is generally what lead to either amputations or even death. And what is really appalling, what is beyond bizarre to unbelievable for me, is that with all the consensus, all the organizations and all the studies and all the medical equipment and everything, there isn't properly any established dietary guidelines that clearly says this is good for you if you're insulin resistant or type 2 diabetes, and this is not. There are so many doctors who would approve eggs, which I definitely won't, okay? And I think the point is, I'm going to give you 3 steps, and also a bonus one, but if you just follow through the 3 steps, you would definitely make sure not just beyond 30, you could get to 70, 80, 90, and you'd still be healthy. And besides, the most important thing, as the title suggests, it's more about adding life to your years. So therefore, the first thing you need to do is you need to cut out all refined sugar and sweeteners, and just have a predominantly whole food plant-based diet. You can have, obviously you can have some meat, you can have, if you want to have cheese and egg and stuff, try to limit it. Let's say 90% of your diet should be whole food plant-based, and an occasional binge eating or ribs and honey and whatever doesn't make a big difference. That's step 1. Number 2, you need to, once you adapt to that, you'll get, your metabolic health will be far better to handle slight caloric restriction and also time restricted eating. So you need to make sure you get all your calories within a window of starting with 12 hours, and you need to gradually start shrinking that to 8 or 6. I would say ideally you want to make it as short as possible, humanly, and you're not malnourished or anything. And after that, number 3, I think this you should start implementing right away. That is, after you have a substantial meal, after each and every meal, you need to go for a walk for at least 30 minutes. If you can't do that, try to Google soleus push-ups. You just do an exercise where you want to raise your calves, even in a seated position. If you want to know more about it, I can make a video. Comment down below if you need to know more about it. And the bonus tip, number 4, is this. In fact, it is so powerful that if you just do that one thing, you'd be well off for the rest of your life. You'd avoid practically most of the diseases until you are like close to 100 years old. That is, you want to have just, you shrink your eating window to such a level that you eat all your food within a couple of hours, practically one meal a day. While you're doing that, if it is a whole food plant-based diet, that's simply one of the best things you can do. But don't go crazy over it. Don't do OMAD straight away or cut off all your meat just like that. If you're able to do it, that's okay. But as usual, please take full responsibility. And this is, I would say, the holy grail to be healthy as long as possible.